Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. On this week's podcast, our contributing editor, Michael Heiss, joins us from his home in Los Angeles to talk about the recent Consumer Electronics Show and some of the latest TV technology developments and other smart home products that he thinks are worth knowing about. After attending CES virtually last year, Mike made it back in person to Las Vegas this year. He was there, so you and I didn't have to
be. And I'm paying the price.
Following a few days of rest from what is always a hectic event, today we'll talk about broader TV technology trends, breaking it down a bit brand by brand, as well as learn a bit about more of the gadgets and goofiness that always make an in-person trip to CES so unique. There's no one better suited to do this than our guest today, who is not only a CDF Fellow and Lifetime Achievement Award recipient, but also one of the foremost experts on consumer and broadcast video technology. Michael Heiss, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, I'm still sort of in the fog of CES, paying the price. I didn't get COVID, but 6 days at CES was just about enough. I went so God. You don't have to. That's right.
I have stopped going to that event because I don't have the stamina for it. And you're older than I am, so I'm impressed that you made it through in one piece. So congratulations there.
Thank you.
So what was different about this year's CES experience for you? You mentioned there's some venue changes and things like that. I'm sure some of that would be interesting to our listeners who have attended CES, and some will just be bored by it. But let's dive in there, and
sure.
Then we can get into the product.
For those who have been to CES, and I did not go last year and the year before that, as everyone knows, it was virtual. There is the new West Hall, which looks like it was lifted up out of a European airport and plopped down in Las Vegas. They've moved where the car people used to be into that hall. Then the South Hall, which is the two-level thing where you saw a lot of the little Chinese guys and, a little bit more networky stuff, didn't use that at all. So it was the main central hall that everybody knows, the North Hall and the West Hall. They claim over 115,000 attendees, but unaudited. I will reserve my judgment. The aisles weren't empty, but they weren't crowded. But everybody seemed to be happy, and there did appear to be enough people in terms of exhibitors that nobody was disappointed. All the majors were there. The only ones that weren't there, to be sort of honest, are the car guys. GM, Ford, VW, Porsche, Audi, and Mercedes were not there. The West Hall, where the car stuff was a strange mixture of Stellantis, which is Chrysler, or the old Chrysler, and a lot of B2B stuff, a lot of AI, and a lot of stuff that you'll see later on in cars, but nothing you can buy. But I'm glad I went.
And is there no longer a use of the Sands Convention Center?
Oh, I forgot the Sands. Yeah. The Sands was there, and downstairs was the Eureka Park, which was as big as it was before, but it was almost all the French pavilion, the Israeli pavilion, the British pavilion, the Singapore pavilion. There was one guy, Senegal Numerique, and all of that stuff is cool. But what I found missing were all the startup guys, where being at Eureka Park was like the next step after a Kickstarter or Indiegogo. It was all government subsidized. And I didn't really, to be honest, you've seen one, you've seen them all. I was a little disappointed in that. Upstairs, there was a lot of food tech, health tech, those kinds of things. Oh, yeah, and I'm sorry, one thing that goes to the one of the video trends is in the CES Innovations, which is their, product of the year kind of thing. There wasn't one television. There wasn't one AVR. There were very few audio-centric devices. That's neither good nor bad. It's telling about where what we used to call the consumer electronics industry and the show by extension are going.
And I have to ask before we get into the product stuff and the broader trends, did you take the Tesla drive under the
Yes, I
tunnel,
did.
through the tunnel?
Yes, I did.
And where does that go? Where does it come from? Where does it go? I can't figure that out for the
Actually, I
life of me.
first took it when I was out in Vegas for both NAB and Infocom. There's one station where you go down the escalators in front of the main, good old fashioned main hall. You
Okay.
go from there to the new West Hall, and then they've extended it up to the Resorts World, which is further up on the strip. It also goes to the South Hall, but the South Hall wasn't open during this show. So it was cool. And when I was there in June for Infocom, it was a heck of a lot better than 110-degree heat walking from one hall to another. It was cool, you know.
And you logistically, otherwise, it wasn't terrible for you, because that's been my biggest headache. Literally every time I've gone to CES,
Well,
just getting from point A to point B.
Well, it's interesting. I expected with 115,000 reported attendees, there would be lines out up the tunnel, if you will, and there weren't. But again, for those of you who are familiar with the Vegas Convention Center, to walk from the main hall across Paradise over to this West Hall, it would make my cardiologist pleased that I did it. But other than that, it was tiring. So the
Okay.
Tesla thing was, it's interesting.
And let's talk broader trends now. So you as you like to do, you do the AI schmatter stuff, and I get all lost in which ones we're talking about. So
So do
maybe
I, and that's the point. There was a lot of AI. Separate that from AR, VR, XR, MR. Everything AI it's the buzzword. It's almost, for those of you who are old enough, remember digital ready speakers?
mm-hmm.
Speakers aren't digital ready. There was a lot of usage of AR, but I think my theme for the show, it's not about what it is, it's about what it does. Or it's not how it does it, it's that it does it. And there were some useful applications of AI in terms of predicting things, but it'll mostly become a background application. In terms of VR, AR, MR, XR, Sony did show their PlayStation VR headset. TCL showed a really cool AR glasses, which when they bring out, I'm going to try and get and review, where it not only lets you look through the glasses and see things in AR in front of you, but it does subtitles. Like if you go to the opera and it's Italian and they have the subtitles above the screen, here it projects it in the bottom of the glasses as a translation. They wouldn't let you try it on. That was very cool. And I will confess, I'm a bit of a chicken. I did not try on the Sony VR headset because there's still enough pandemic that I'm not trying on a VR headset at a trade show. But
I'm with you there.
Everybody who tried it said it was very good and a dramatic improvement over the original one. So that was that was the extent of that. I think the real true birth of that will come with the Sony thing, with the stuff that Meta is still doing, and eventually maybe later this year when Apple comes out with theirs. But we'll see.
What about the AI stuff? So where did you see that applied that made sense?
Well, it was AI to guess your room conditions, AI to analyze health. There was a lot of health tech, food tech. The AI toilet. Well, no, the toilet wasn't AI. That was all sensors. But in terms of trying to predict what in years ago we used to call fuzzy logic, it knows what I've done, and it can take what I've done and where I am and what's around me to try and figure out what I want to do. And that's going to come up gradually. It'll take time for people to acclimate it. So it's here, and all the TV manufacturers, we're using AI to make the picture brighter because we've used AI to analyze the content and the audio and adjust it accordingly. And you might even like the way it looks. And typically you did. But I think the consumer still needs to figure out what this is. And in an era when everybody's concerned about privacy, I think that when AI really becomes widely used everywhere, then people have to get over not that it's predicting what I'm going to do, but that it knows what I'm going to do from a privacy standpoint. But it was there. It was everywhere.
Well, we will continue our conversation with Michael Heiss after the break.
Do you want superior smart home automation at a great value? Shelly Wi-Fi relays by Alterco Robotics cover DC to line voltage, allowing you to control lights, outlets, appliances, garage doors, pumps, and much more. There are Shelly sensors and power measurement devices to help you measure temperature, humidity, lux, or motion, and electrical consumption from single wire to 3-phase with neutral. You can use Shelly with a licensed driver for Control 4, Elon, or other premium systems, as well as your customer's existing hub, voice assistant, or any platform that accepts REST, MQTT, or CoAP. Shelly can make IoT very easy. Available now at Blackwire, City Electric Supply, and Worthington, or at shellyusa.com.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Michael Heiss, contributing editor to Residential Tech Today. And Michael, the key to your coverage for me is always the video stuff. And I don't want to miss any more fun little gadgety things. We can maybe circle back to some of those toward the end, but let's dive into video. And you were talking about something that I kind of observed at CES as well, which was the real focus area of TV manufacturers creating monitors for gaming, and how those sort of overlap or cross over with regular TVs now because they're just so big. And the one that you mentioned, curved, and one of the observations that you had put in one of your articles, and I finally got to see at CEDIA Expo, was the Samsung one that curves around you mechanically, or you can
the
go
LG
flat.
one that actually is a little motorized and it will bend in and out.
Oh, that's the one. The LG. I'm getting mixed up.
Yeah.
Samsung
Well, no,
and
the
LG.
Samsung one was the big wide one that rotates around. But I think where the average user, consumer, installer, designer will see this is that on the one, what I call the monitorization of TVs and the TVization of monitors. All of the TV brands, and this is now into the second year of this, featured things like VRR and faster refresh rates and response time as key features that they're promoting in their TV sets. And those are almost exclusively aimed at gamers. So the TV sets are getting those features promoted. 144 hertz sets were not unusual. There were prototypes and some early examples of sets with 240 hertz. So that's in response to the rise of games with Xbox and PS5, as well as consoles. But on the flip side, it's monitors that are more acting like TV sets. And I think you saw some of those at CD as well, where some of the monitors had LGs had WebOS built in, or more than one input, and even a remote, so that it's actually a 3-tiered thing. It's not a little 21-inch or 24-inch monitor, which is what I'm using here. It's a broader monitor for regular computing, business computing, creation computing, gaming, and again, going back to business, all in one. And the curved thing is coming back to really immerse you into what you're doing, not for a game, but I've got two 24-inch monitors here, and I'm looking at you in one, but if I want to look at the other, I got to go like that. And that's distracting to me and distracting to the other person that's involved. But where you've got a big monitor, you're looking dead in. And I think that along with the multiple HDMI outputs, it's all going to blend together and at the end of the day become a function of what is it that the consumer wants to do. and then you have to determine which is best set to do that. Monitors are not going away, they're changing.
Okay. And you mentioned quite a bit about LG. Let's talk about what they did that was unique.
Well,
what is it about the wireless feature that you mentioned?
I'm gonna lump the two of the big wireless finger quotes things at CES, where a startup company down in San Diego called Displace, and I of course walked up to them in my own inimitable fashion and said, "What is Displace?" But they had no sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that everybody watching this has read about it or seen it, and I'll write something up, and I'm sure we'll put it up in ResTech today. The Displace, before I get to LG, is a real, true wireless set. You could do the old magician trick and run a hula hoop around it. No connections whatsoever. It's got 4 big honker batteries, 2 in each side, and it's got a hub station, which they did not show, that is where you connect things, and it connects to the TV to transfer the source material over to the display. But since it's wireless, and they said it's about 20 pounds, and it's a 55-inch 4K OLED, you can literally take it and jam it up against the wall, and it's got a vacuum driven suction thing on the back, and sure as heck it did stick against the wall. I wouldn't put it against brick, but they did demo it, of course, on smooth surfaces and on somewhat patterned surfaces. It's $3,000, and it's a 55-inch TV set. Is it cool? Yeah. But wait a minute, it's a 55-inch 4K set and it's $3,000?
Yeah.
And it's a startup, and they were very sort of evasive. Does it have Dolby Vision? Does it have this? Does it have that? It is a smart TV, but I think to some extent, it's a parlor trick. And then they said you can take 4 of them and do a 2x2 array and make it into an 8K set, but for $9,000, I can buy a real 8K set with no bezels in the middle. So it's an interesting concept, and I give them a lot of credit for it. It's not going to be available until December, and we'll see if there are people that will clearly want it. It's an interesting idea, but the people want it. The LG.
I wonder if it's something that would be acquired by a bigger brand that could be incorporated in
well, but that would be
existing.
There's nothing that's in this set, and clearly, without knowing any of the patent situations, any of the major brands, could get some interns to do this. I mean, it's not. Maybe that's not fair, but it's not something that if a Samsung, LG, Sony, TCL, Hisense, Vizio, if they wanted to do this, presuming that the Displace stuff didn't have any of this patent protected, there's no big barrier to do it. The LG thing, that was a lot different. It was somewhat different. It was an LG TV set with their latest and greatest web OS, for all of their sets, they've made a dramatic improvement in terms of the usability of the interface. But where that is wireless is it's a TV. It's a 97-inch TV, and it's an OLED. It's big, and it's really good. Where do you plug stuff in? There's a little box that sits on the side. You plug your stuff into the box. You plug the box into the wall, and the wireless is the communication between, if you remember the Samsung, I forget the name of it, the hub that they had in the Cedia market a couple of years ago that was connected by fiber to the display, so the display could be thinner because it didn't have the tuner or anything else in it. And
right, for like the frame TVs and
exactly.
things like that in their line.
So picture that wire cut and the stuff still plugged into this, hub, and it goes wirelessly using a proprietary wireless technology in full 4K, 120 hertz, the whole deal over the TV. It's an interesting concept, and again, as in everything, as you go up into the custom market, there are people who will want it. One of the interesting things in it is on the top, there was what looks like a turntable that you spun around, and that was to orient the off-air antenna for better reception. But then I asked them if it was ATSC 3.0, and they said they haven't figured it out. They haven't decided yet. Of course, they figured it out. So those were both interesting to the point where the popular press has really become fascinated by those things.
Now, for that LG TV, you'd still deal with a power cord, though, correct?
Yeah, you got to. Well, it is powered in that you need to plug the TV into the wall, and a big OLED consumes, I'm sure, more power than a 55-inch set that OLED that the displaced people are using. So you'd need even more batteries, but to a certain extent, for a set that's that big, you're not going to want to hang it on the wall unless if you want that. So there's the dilemma. For that size set, for a considerably cheaper price, you can get an ultra short throw. And both Hisense and Samsung had 8K short throws. Short throws, as we saw at CEDIA, are an increasingly growing part of the display community. So it's a question of, do you want a big screen? There are big screens galore. Hisense showed a 110-inch 8K set. But that goes into my old thing of, but how do you get it in the room? It bends in the middle once. If you remember the original Panasonic 103-inch plasma back in the day, there were people that had to build a room around the TV. So for that size, you might want to go to micro LED or standard projection or UST. And I think that UST is really coming into its own.
Yeah, so ultra short throw definitely getting more and more popular. I was a little unsure of it when it first came out. I didn't get the benefit, but now I'm starting to see it improve to the point where it looks like
it's a thing.
A regular
it's
TV.
A real thing, because initially a lot of people would associate an ultra short throw as the thing over the whiteboard in your kid's classroom or in the boardroom for that more industrial, educational, commercial type of application. But they were there from major brands, and they were there from the second and third tier brands. And the fact that the second and third tier brands were showing them shows that it's become a viable category, because it was worth being knocked off.
Right.
And even at a different end of the spectrum, Leica, the camera people, the very famous camera people, had their own ultra short throw. And it's sort of curious. I got the press releases and they said, please come look at it. And I said, surely I will. And I'm marching around the floor to rack up my 25 miles during the course of my stay to find it. And I couldn't find it. And I'm wandering around again. And I was in the Hisense booth. And then I look to the side and I go, damn, it's in the Hisense booth. And they were not shy about it, to their credit. It is about $3,000 more than a, typically comparable short throw, but it has Leica optics, and it's in a really cool, milled aluminum kind of case. So unlike some of the short throws where they get sunk down into the furniture and you just see the aperture pointing up, this was meant to be displayed, the kind of work of art. And was the picture better than the guts of a Hisense or anything else comparable that were in it? Hard to tell, because you certainly couldn't see them side by side, but it was very impressive. So, that's part of the market that we're in. So I'm sure that will find a home in the market. But it was interesting to see they went there.
So they partnered with Hisense on some of the internal guts of the product?
The electronic guts, save, I'm sure, for some tweaking, but the
Hmm.
electronic guts are Hisense. The
Hmm.
optics are Leica. And again,
Okay.
that's what they're there for.
And industrial design
Oh, to be
is
sure, to be sure.
like their
I mean,
focus,
it was
right?
a very handsome looking piece.
Hmm.
You know, is it something that is worth it? That's up to the budget and the person buying it.
What about TCL? You mentioned resegmentation and their focus on the CEDIA channel.
Yeah, they've redone. They've got some new people on their management team. One of them is a fellow named Scott Ramirez, who I know back from when he used to work from Toshiba. And what they've done is they've had 2 series, 3 series, 4 series, 5 series, 6 series, and seven series with a number. What they've done now is they have two broader categories: S series, which is the value line, and the Q series, which are the higher end line. And, I could rattle off the features, but I think you could probably guess that's more gaming features, more dimming zones, more micro LED, and a better picture. So, what they're doing is trying to hit a different segment of the market with the S series and the Q series. And one of the things that was interesting for people listening here, perhaps, is that they announced for the first time that they've incorporated things like ability to do better outside remote control and RS-232 and remote codes and things that are important to custom installers. And they will be going after the custom install market. I'm sure we'll see them next year and this year, next year too, at CEDIA Expo in Denver. So that was interesting to see them put their toe in the custom water.
And other sort of surprise brands, you mentioned Sharp
Yeah, the
Aquas, which
return of
was,
Sharp. And
yeah,
Sharp, my first flat panel TV was a Sharp
yeah.
way too long ago. And they're now owned by Foxconn, who are the people
Oh,
that build that own the factories that build the iPhones. But they have the technology. They're bringing back the same kind of thing. They're doing a Sharp line and an Aquos line. And for those with longer memories, Aquos was their higher end line. So they're doing, let me see in my notes, they're doing a broad range of sizes, a standard line and Aquos as the custom line, including, OLEDs. They will have some Roku. So that's yet another brand. One thing that was interesting, just going back a little bit to CES, is that if you're familiar with shows, there's a thing called outboarding, where if you're a smaller company or maybe even a bigger company and you don't want to pay to exhibit at a show, you rent a hotel suite. You don't get listed
mhm.
in the directory, but it's a lot easier and cheaper. And Sharp was one of the people that in the olden days you would have considered outboard, but they were in a CES sanctioned hotel with 5,000 square feet of exhibit space, but I didn't get over there because it was too dispersed. So that
Mm.
was, but they were definitely there. The other two TV brands that I think are worth mentioning are Roku and Xperi, doing the same thing a little bit differently. Roku, I mean, right over here to my right is a 48-inch Roku Series 5, which now would probably be an S series. And it's a tremendous value set with good performance, but it's a TCL set. And is
Mm.
it Roku TCL set or a TCL set with Roku? And what Roku is going to do will be doing is bringing out Roku branded TV sets. So you will still have TCL and Hisense and many other brands using the Roku OS, but they're also going to bring out their own TV sets. I'm guessing more for and they wouldn't say precisely where these are going to land, but more for the club market or mainstream. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them perhaps in Best Buy and in Costco and Sam's Club and those places. But, everybody needs to remember Roku isn't a device company anymore. They're a streaming service company and an advertising company, and that's where they make their money. The streaming devices and the TVs are a means to an end, or the razors to the blades kind of analogy. But you will be seeing those, no question about it. Xperi, a name perhaps not well known outside of the industry, is taking a different tack. Xperi is the company that owns HT Radio, DTS, the IMAX home thing, and TiVo. And there still are TiVos, and there's the TiVo Stream, which is their little external streamer device. And they also have a lot of IP, intellectual property. I guess Internet Protocol too, but they have a lot of IP and things that they do in the set-top box and guide business. And what they're going to do is license their OS so that it won't be a TiVo TV. It will be a TV powered by a TV, basically mix them up, a TV powered by TiVo. Say that fast 3 times.
Interesting.
And the reason for that is that in the industry is what's called a white label. They're going to go to a set manufacturer, and initially these will just be European sets, brands like Vestel, which is very big in Europe. And instead of having Vestel Vision or doing a Roku or Google TV or Fire TV set, they're going to take the OS, brand it themselves, and it'll be a Vestel TV powered by TiVo. And that gives them the best of both worlds. They have a streaming operating system that's well baked by somebody else that they just need to port into their TV set. And then they've got somebody who's, as I just said for Roku, somebody else who's going to sell the ads and make the streaming service deals. So it'll be very interesting to see how that works and if and probably when it comes to the US. As an aside, just to make things crazy, the largest selling, if you will, streaming service, people would say Roku, but it's actually, could it be Samsung's Tizen, which right now is only because they sell a lot of TV sets. So by virtue of the TV sets being sold with Tizen in it, they're getting this large number of subscribers or users. The same for LG's WebOS. And then, of course, Fire TV, et cetera, Apple TV Apple TV will be the only one that's a standalone device. Remember all the rumors, Apple's going to come out with a TV set.
Yep.
They
never happened.
They didn't, they haven't, and they won't. Any more than they probably won't come out with a car, unlike some other manufacturer. And but what they are doing, Samsung and LG they're going to license their operating system on a white label basis, so that just as you will have TV sets powered by TiVo, you may have some second or third tier brand powered by the same OS that is in a Samsung or LG set. So streaming, I know you give me a hard time because I'm always about streaming these days, but that's where the money is. The money is in the advertising and selling, getting the money that the TV sets or the streaming devices get. When you pick up a Roku remote or a Fire TV remote and there's a Netflix button on there, they don't do that because they're nice guys. They get paid to do that. That's where the money is. So the dynamic of streaming and TVs and streaming devices is the vessel is what's going to shape the industry going forward. And yet one more thing is that Charter, which is now Spectrum, and Comcast have collaborated, or I think Comcast owns Xumo, XUMO, and they're going to get their own streaming service collaboration. And true to form, Hisense in their display showed that they are making sets with, pick 'em. Want Roku? Got it. Google TV? Got it. Android TV? Got it. Fire TV? Got it. In fact, on the side of their booth was a Toshiba set made by Hisense with Fire TV. So they're doing all of them, and that's really what's driving this thing. Do I need an external device? Topic for another article. But
right.
You're still going to need them, but the TV set manufacturers want to get really in the pool with this, because that's where the money is. There's no money to be made by selling TV sets.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can't leave without talking a little bit about audio.
Well, let me just do one more thing that I have on my list that I want to mention.
Okay.
Is micro LED. And
right, which is a topic that you covered extensively in the article that's about to come out in the magazine.
There you go. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything in the article that got outdated. But Samsung, which really popularized this in the consumer world with the wall, but now everybody's in it. LG, Planar, a bunch of folk. But they have announced, after many shows of speculation, they are going to bring out a 77-inch micro LED. No price, no other features, although you can guess. No price and delivery. And then in one of the press releases, they said they were going to do a micro LED down to 50 inches. I'll believe it when I see it. But there's no technical barrier that would prevent them from doing it, other than it would be extremely pricey. But the fact that they're going to do a 77-inch micro LED, I think is significant. Samsung also announced, for those that like the QD OLED, which only Sony and Samsung have now, which Samsung just calls OLED. They're going to have a 77-inch model, I believe. I'm going to look at my notes. Yes, a 76-inch CX mini LED, micro LED, and a 77-inch QD OLED. So you'll get a larger version of that. Anything else in TVs? Matt, we could go on forever, but let's go to let's do a little audio.
Well, your old employer, Harman, always has a separate major exhibit offsite somewhere. Did you happen to go by there? I know you visited them for us in person at their headquarters, so maybe not.
It's the same kind of thing. They were at what used to be the Hard Rock, which is now the Virgin Hotel. And I really wanted to get over there, but just didn't have the opportunity. Fortunately, I only live 10 miles from their headquarters, so maybe I'll go over there.
Yeah.
And they had, the kinds of things that one would expect these days from Harman JBL, in terms of everything from, little portable mini speakers, all the way up to, the other things that JBL does of, huge, large venue arrays. One of the interesting things that they came out with was the JBL turntable, called the JBL BT, stands for Bluetooth. And for anyone who was at CEDIA, you would have seen the Victrola, which is the Sonos connected turntable. And now JBL is coming out with one. So I guess that just leads me to say that vinyl is the new streaming.
Very good. Yeah. So you have your vinyl playing and you just stream it wirelessly to the speakers.
The Victrola goes to your Sonos. And both of these, in fairness, have preamp outputs. And they have decent specs as turntables and fairly well-regarded cartridges. And the JBL one is Bluetooth. Now, the only complaint that I have is, but that means I have to get up every 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why LPs and CDs went away in the first
But
place.
they're
So
coming back. The last year, last year was
it's whatever
the biggest year for vinyl in recent history. They can't make enough of them.
Yeah, my kid's into it. Freshman in high school. I think it's just the tangible thing. It's not necessarily the analog aspect of it. That's maybe an audiophile
to be sure.
Benefit, but it's for the kids. I think it's just having something to look at and hold on to.
Yeah, but they probably like the little Fuji Polaroid like cameras. I mean, that's the same age group that are into that. But there's one other audio thing is Dirac is introducing a new version of their technology called audio room treatment. It's only going to be available when it launches in a fairly expensive piece from Storm Audio, but it'll be more widely available towards the end of the year. But, it's just something to be on the lookout for because it really did sound quite good.
Yeah, I was curious about that because we did do an interview last week on the podcast with someone from Dirac on that technology and other stuff from Dirac, but it reduces some of the issues with bass and listening.
And with many of these things, when it's described before they start the demo, your brain's going, "Oh, come on, really?" But it really did make a difference. So
great to hear.
Not cheap, but good.
Right. And there's a lot of folks with the high-end receivers that use that Dirac technology in there to basically tune their room, and this adds to it. So to kind of wrap up, I feel like Matter is a whole other discussion, and it's something that's evolving. And Wi-Fi 7, I know those are a couple of things that you kind of wanted to touch on.
Topics for another day, but before we run out of time, Matter was everywhere, but so is HCA. Not as everywhere-ish, but this melded into all the majors. Sony didn't have TV sets in their booth. LG, Samsung, TCL, Hisense were all really focusing on Matter as the means of bringing everything into the TV as the control point. And now they've been showing that for maybe 7 or 8 years now, but with Wi-Fi 6, 6E, 7 coming. I did see quickly the first Wi-Fi 7 devices that are going to be available in the spring, and Matter everywhere.
Yeah, so it's a promise of everyone working with the same protocol for control, essentially. It's what Matter means. And
one would finally hope that what was missing that came to the fore at CES were the products with it built in, just as there were more products with Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 6E is great, but if you don't have any devices that can receive it, don't go nowhere. But there was more 6E, more Matter, some home connectivity alliance, mostly in the appliance world. And then that fills in with the Internet of Everything.
And the Internet of Toilets? Do we want to end there? Because I think that would be a fun place to wrap up.
I want to do one or two of those things. There was one booth that had a big sign that said IoT. Now, naturally, to us, that means something. And then below it said Internet of Toilets. It's cocktail party talk. There was down in the Eureka Park area, I have to look at this to read it correctly, the Industrialized Edible Insect Factory Farm. Now, this isn't like the old ant farm that you had on your desk. This is a big industrial park-sized automated farm to produce edible insects.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, okay. Then there were some interesting things. There was, if you're, you have a daughter, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm sure that at some point she asked or somebody gave her one of those little music boxes with the ballerina that twirls around and it plays little tinkle tinkle music. Well, there's an IoT music box now with that same sort of mechanism where it's those metal tines that is the drum wheels. Well, you take that concept and you take, I'm sure everybody's seen the Yamaha player pianos that where you put a, well, now you don't put a disc in, but you know, the Yamaha kind of player pianos that are playing back music digitally. If those two concepts had a love child, it would be the MIDI controlled music box. And you play music from your phone, you play content from your phone, and it plays on the music box, or you have a MIDI keypad and you can compose music for a music box. And, you know, okay, that's cool. There was a smart surfboard. The smartest thing I do is not go on a surfboard anymore.
What's it keep track of?
I have no idea
how many times you
crash. I have absolutely no idea.
Okay.
There was a lot of battery storage. There was a lot of kitchen stuff. LG, again, some of the viewers, listeners may have seen LG, I don't remember the name of it, has something which is like an in-home dry cleaner. And it's a big closet where you open the door, you hang your clothes, you close the door, and it sanitizes and cleans them. And they've actually gotten some traction for that. Now they have a similar device for shoes. Now, I could neither afford the device or the shoes that would warrant being put in there, but clearly this wasn't a goof. This was a real product. And, you know, I'm sure that in high-end custom homes, Cedia guys, Cedia people, that'll be an interesting thing. What else? There was one thing, and again, just because it's the way that I characterize these things, there was a lot of pet stuff. And there was one thing that looked like sort of one of those open-top deep fryers. But picture if an open-top deep fryer, a KitchenAid stand mixer, and a Keurig also had a love child, it would be a thing where you put water in, you put in the pet food, you close the lid, it mixes it and cooks it, and then a bowl pops out, and you have dog food. You know, okay, you know, good for them. And GE, well, which licensee has it? There was a GE Profile stand mixer, like a not Cuisinart, like a KitchenAid with a dough hook and all of that. It was $1,000, but why was it smart? It had a scale built in, so if you're making something, as you pour the ingredients in, it will tell you how much you put in. It'll use AI, to your earlier question, to judge the consistency. Is the dough ready? Are the egg whites whipped properly? And, you know, it's interesting. There's a market for everything. $1,000, a little bit out of my price range, but it was well built, and there are people that value that and will buy it. So, you know, CES, you never know. I'm just looking at my notes. You never know what you're going to find.
And, you know, there's always somebody that needs something that has everything. So that's what these do. These fill in those gaps for the person that has everything. And if you need a very expensive shoe deodorizer, I guess that's something that some spouse is going to buy there.
If you need it and you can afford it and it does something that you want, good for you.
Exactly. Well, I think that we've covered a lot of ground, and we can talk again and get into more details as things evolve and become real. But Michael, thank you so much for taking the time out. Thanks for going to CES so we didn't have to.
It's called taking one for the team.
Yeah. And I hope you have a great 2023.
You too, and to all the listeners and viewers. They did hand out COVID tests. There were guys from Abbott Labs handing out COVID tests. So as soon as we're done, I'm going to take one.
I've thought of all the great tchotchkes over the years, and that's probably one of the worst I can think of.
Yeah, but but unfortunately, I mean, I did wear a mask, but I was there according to CES with 115,000 people, and I'm not joking. I'm going to make sure that this just isn't a cold because of the weather out here in LA, and but hopefully all is good.
All right. Well, thanks so much,
My
Mike.
pleasure.
Have a great rest of your
You
day.
too.
Michael Heiss is a CEDIA Fellow and Lifetime Achievement Award recipient and a contributing editor to Residential Tech Today. And that wraps up today's show. Special thanks to Pretty Easy Podcast for producing and editing this episode. If you're new to Residential Tech Talks, please subscribe to the weekly podcast on your preferred platform and consider rating or reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Also, check out all the latest residential tech news at the magazine's website, restechtoday.com, where you can also subscribe to the print or digital magazine and to our Tuesday and Friday email newsletters. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist, residential tech.
Home automation, smart device, home or smart house.